Welcome to the Post Shift Podcast, your raw look at the hospitality industry, brought to you by SHC. What has happened in let me start that again. What has happened in Post Shifters? Welcome back to another episode of the Post Shift Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Shawn Soole. I'm looking forward today. I've had Simon Ford on the show before. He's one of the nicest, most genuine people I've met in the industry, and he just, if I ask him if he wants to be on the show, he's like, yep, just tell me a date when I'm not traveling across the world. I think I'm in between trips right now. But this is also the last, if you're listening to the podcast, this is actually the last episode of the year. So I wanted to go out on a bang. I've got a couple more live streams planned, so don't worry that too much there, guys. But like, I've got a couple of live streams planned next week. But this is my last podcast for 2024, and I'm very, very happy that it's Mr. Simon Ford.
Hi, Shawn. Yes, actually, I am still traveling. I am on the road.
Are you? Where are you right now?
I'm in New York City, and so I don't know if you remember, but I live in Nashville, Tennessee, where a lot of people there have beards and hats like yours. And but now I came out to New York. It's the 20th anniversary of Employees Only, and there's a lot of sort of festivities around that. And I felt like I went to the opening 20 years ago. Had many fond memories from back in the day, and it was sort of I'm back in town to relive some of those old memories and see some old faces.
Whether or not you want to relive those memories or not.
Yeah, I think sometimes you do things to remind yourselves why you don't do them, right?
As I said, you've been traveling a ton with Ford's Gin. I'm not going to bother going into the in-depth how long you were bartending before you did it, but what was your aha moment when it came to like creating Ford's Gin and taking this new direction?
The aha moment to me really does start with a couple of people, but I would say from a product insight perspective, it's Sasha Petrusky at Milk and Honey, who pointed out to me that he said he actually asked me the question, Simon, what is your favorite gin and a martini and why? And I went, well, my favorite gin and a martini is this. This is pre-Ford's Gin days. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is because of the balance, this, and so on. And then he asked me the next question, he said, what's your favorite gin in a gin Ricky? And I'm like, oh, this, because of the coriander and the way it structures with the lime, and I love that, and it tastes it. So and then he goes, what's your favorite in a gin fizz? And this went on, and then he just pointed out to me, he goes, you've just said different gin for every single different drink. Mm-hmm. And we sort of came to this conclusion together that if you like gin, you can probably say what your favorite gin is, but if you love gin, then your answers are going to be, well, my favorite in a martini, my favorite in a gin and tonic, my favorite in a Tom Collins is, right? And so he then pointed out that there's only one space in the world, and we should create a premium jack of all trades gin that could try its best to work with all of the different flavors that we find in the classic cocktails, because if it works in those, it'll then work as a great springboard for creativity for bartenders as well. And so we sort of took a chef-like approach and reverse engineered a recipe for Ford's Gin, and it just felt like a different approach to gin, and I was definitely a naysayer at the beginning, because I was like, the world doesn't need any more gins. But Sasha was like, actually, it's because there are so many gins doing so many different things. It needs a kind of place to go that's a safe place that's going to make a great Negroni, a great martini. And if you take it home or if you put it in your well, it's going to do the job. And so that was kind of that was kind of the epiphany moment. It was definitely driven by Sasha Petrusky. But I got to be honest, the other person was a guy called Multibanico, and he's the one that looked at a business plan, and I think that's also important, because like crazy ideas, sad but true, need to make money, and passions need to be sustainable in the structure of society. And so Malte was brilliant at taking the idea and actually sort of putting it into a spreadsheet. I'm going to just call it a spreadsheet, and saying, actually, this could work you know, and we could pay ourselves a salary one day. And yeah, one day would one day happen.
Has your perspective, how has your perspective changed since launching the brand when it comes to that balance between, I've been doing a lot of research and reading and asking AI about balancing out this creative slash business mindset and how creatives sometimes clash with the business people and the business people sometimes clash with the creatives. How has your perspective changed with like that sort of element of the business?
For me, I, you know, I'm creative, right? But you know, want to be, and of course, every minute I spend in the business world thinking about the numbers is stopping my creativity. And so, you know, and I think it's quite rare for people to be good at both as well, right? So for me, it was always important to have someone in business to sort of be there to sort of stop you from going off the rails and make sure that it's an idea that works. And I always appreciate that person, even though I get into massive fights with those people. You know, it's kind of like a love-hate relationship. I'm like, I want to do this. They're like, yeah, you can't. I'm like, yes, I can. And they're like, no, you can't. I'm like, well, how can I do it? Well, if you considered this and this, I'm like, all right, that'll do. I'll work with that. And so I do think it's this interesting symbiotic relationship. I think that the one true place where people get to be creative without thinking about the bottom line is actually in art, right? You know, and so while I do see spirits and cocktails as kind of like a piece of art, they are a piece of art that needs to fit into a structure that needs to make money for it to be sustained. And so the two things are always considered by me. I always look at the business person as someone that enables me to be able to do what I do.
Mm. So with the since the launch of the brand to now, has with the way the gin market has sort of expanded, like I think even articles last 5 years ago, 6 years ago were like, oh well, the gin market's flooded. What are we like? There's so many gins on the market. How is your direction, or how's your direction changed when it comes to like where Fords fits into that market?
It hasn't at all. You know, I almost have been waiting for this moment, to be honest. You know, I've always said about Forge Gin that its strength is this sort of beautiful balance of flavor. It sort of supports the juniper, but everything plays a role within the drink, and it's sort of balanced. And there's not one kind of like sort of flavor spike anywhere on on it. And I think that that's its strength. But at the same time, in a world where there are so many gins vying for attention, it's also its weakness, because it's very easy to market and use a unique point of difference from a flavor perspective, rather than balanced, which is a word that's overused and quite boring, right? But obviously that all of those different flavors cluttered the market. And I feel like there's a moment when actually I just want my gin to taste like a gin. I want it to be what it says on the label, and I'm like, well, here we are. We're and I'm not saying we're the only one that does that, but that's one of the things that we do. We are a gin now in juniper flavor, and and we're a London dry style, and it's classic but with a modern edge. All of the different things. And so I actually think right now is a good time to be Forge Gin, because I think that being familiar but different is what we are, and that's obviously one of those keys to being successful sometimes. So maybe, I mean, obviously it's a really tough market out there at the moment, Shawn, as most people in hospitality know. I mean, there's always the anomalies that are doing really well, but the majority of people are having a tough time, no matter what the field, whether you're making the spirits, the beer, opening bars, restaurants. I mean, it's an interesting period right now for everyone in hospitality. And so, we'll see. But I do think that we as a brand offer a little bit of value and quality and all of the things that I think are good in moments like this. And so yeah, I mean, we'll see, never say never, but I feel like we're positioned well for now, rather than positioned well for 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when we launched into a very cluttered field, as you pointed out.
When it came to development, how much R&D, like how many batches of Forge Gin were out there in the beginning? And did you have like a bit of a brains trust while you were developing it? Like a bunch of industry professionals that would come and sit down and like hang out and let's taste a whole bunch of batches of forged gin and give you some feedback?
I mean, honestly, Shawn, that is the basis of the concept. It started with the brains and thought, process of a bartender rather than a distiller. It's Sasha, it's myself, it's a few other bartenders at the time, sort of brainstorming what would make a good gin. Weirdly enough, none of us coming at it with a distiller's angle, so we don't know if our ideas are actually going to work. But then, obviously we took it to a very accomplished gin distiller who thankfully agreed to work with us. 10th generation. He's someone that's sort of being considered one of the sort of godfathers of gin in the English gin world. His name's Charles Maxwell. And he looked at our recipes, and honestly, he was a bit like, this might work. No, I don't think that will. You could do this differently. So he was able to sort of translate our ideas into actual liquids using his skill set. And so that was a lot of, changes that he would make, but made to actually deliver on what we were trying to do because he could see our vision. But of course, the journey was never over at that point. We definitely took that gin to every friend. I mean, I would say it always started with me and Sasha. If we were happy with a batch, even if it wasn't 100% happy, if we were 75% happy, then we would take it to our friends. And we went to some of the biggest and brightest stars in the industry for input. And we did everything from, taking it to, say, Dale DeGroff, right? And going, Dale, make a martini and tell us what you think. And to putting 50 people in a room with, all of our bartender friends with top secret forms going, hey, and doing blind taste tests and making cocktails and giving us our feedback. And then we could sort of see commonality in what people were saying about the recipes we've made. And then we could take all of that information back to our distiller and make the next batches. And so I don't actually have a set number of gins that I can think that we made, right? Because we only logged the ones that we liked. And even that's up in the 80s, of recipe. Wow. But if there was a gin that we were like, nah, we didn't even write it down, and we probably should have, so that we didn't make the same mistake twice. But we tend to focus on the things that were working, and then what we could do to make them better. And if I'm being honest, the real process was we had a concept that was working, or two or three that we narrowed down to one. And then it was all about fine tuning, raising the citrus, increasing the juniper, increasing the essential oils for more viscosity and so on, refining the balance between all of the different botanicals so that it made a nice smooth martini. But we spoke to probably more than 100 bartenders during the process of creating the liquid, the bottle and the label of Forged Gin. And it, everything from a formal meeting to a casual one, to walking in, to giving someone a bottle just to test at night in cocktails, use the bottle and see if it was economically friendly. We really wanted to answer, to the bartender community with something that they would enjoy. And we wanted to pull from them what they wanted in a gin. And so that's hopefully what Forged Gin represents in a way. It's something that came from the bartender. We just had the help of a really good distiller to get it to where it needed to be, who could translate, the bartender vision.
You mentioned the bottle quickly, and I think the bottle, in the beginning, the bottle got a little bit more attention than it does now. But like the bottle, you put as much attention into the bottle as you did the liquid inside it.
Well, the liquid came first, right? That is the truth. And we did all of that diligence on the liquid. And it created an ethos for us. We're like, if we're going to ask the bartender for their opinion on the liquid, then we may as well do the same for everything else we do. How do they want us to what kind of bottle, what kind of information do they want us to give them, and how they like to see us act as a brand in the marketplace? What kind of support would you feel a brand should give to the bartender community? So we asked all of those questions, and that's how we kind of like arrived on the scene. We arrived on the scene with a liquid that had bartender input, a bottle that had bartender input, a label that had bartender input, and we sort of marketed it, in a way. And marketing is an odd word, but we sort of used our launched to be something that gave to the community, gave platforms to bars and bartenders at places like Tales of the Cocktail. We became a sponsor immediately of Speed Rack, like very much things that are bartender focused and bartender community focused. But it was very interesting because while the liquid was a learning process for everyone involved and everyone that gave us input, when it came to bottles, every bartender is kind of an expert. They kind of know the ones they like, the ones that pour well, the ones that hold speed pour as well. So getting that information was so much easier. So it was a much quicker process to get to the bottle. And if you look at it, it's just really a hybrid of some of the best features of bottles that are already out there. It's got that middle grip, which was suggested to us by Lynette Marrero, actually, of Speed Rack. She's like, some people have smaller hands, and this would help. And, the measurements from, the caps at Tales of the Cocktail, because they're doing all of the batching, and that was immensely helpful from their perspective. Of course, make sure it fits a speed pour. Don't put foil on top. What's really interesting, you started this, Shawn, is everyone talks about the bottle first, and it was really in the early days it was quite frustrating because we put so much energy and effort into liquid, right? And liquid is what ultimately sells rather than label. I mean, that might be naive for me, but you still need a good label. But it's a liquid at the end of the day, especially if you're talking about the bartender, who is someone that is a som to spirits, right? They taste they select the best ones for their bar. So when everyone was just talking about the bottle, it did frustrate me in those days, but it did move on to the gin eventually, and so it probably gave us a little bit more longevity of conversation out in the world. But what's really interesting is we've gotten to a place after 12 years in a few places where forged gin is available, such as New York City, where we want to start bringing forged gin to a wider consumer audience, right? Beyond the bartender, we want to come out from behind the bar and maybe have people become home bartenders with forged gin, and connect the bartender to the consumer. That's kind of our strategy and our thinking. And when we show consumers our bottle, they don't get it like the bartender gets it. Like the bartender picks up a bottle of Fords and goes, "Oh, this neck. Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
This middle grip, right? Oh, measurements. You guys are awesome." But when we give it to a consumer, they're like, none of that makes sense to them, and they think it looks a little bit cheap because it doesn't have all of the bells and whistles that we felt were unnecessary behind the bar. And so I think we might actually start talking to them about why we did the bottle, so that they understand the thought process behind forged gin. We thought about the liquid and we thought about the bottle, and we don't want to change it because this for the bartenders first and foremost. So that's not going to happen. So if we can make consumers, or if we can make the bottle make sense to customers outside of the bar, that would be an amazing thing, so that I can see it. Well, hopefully I can see it now. I'm visualizing, Shawn, someone going, "Oh, did you know that they created this bottle for bartenders? That's why it's the way it is," and sharing that story amongst them. I think the time for that is actually okay, because I think we've earned enough credibility points on the taste and flavor, and we've won enough awards on the gin that we can now go back to maybe talking about something a little bit more frivolous as the packaging.
Yeah, utilitarian, but make it fancy.
Yeah.
Just put it in a cardboard box. Just put it in a cardboard box and it'll be fine.
Exactly.
Put it on the shelf of the liquor store.
Exactly.
Starting your own brand is no small feat. What were some of the biggest challenges you had in the very beginning? And I know you and I have chatted so much on together face to face, and we've chatted in a couple of episodes before. What was the biggest challenge you faced, both creatively and logistically, when it came to getting the forged gin out there in the world?
I mean, there's so much to learn, and I feel like there's a blueprint that's sort of being created, and it gets easier for as time goes on for new entrepreneurs. But you don't know what you don't know, right? So we made all sorts of mistakes. We forgot to put things on labels that needed to be there for compliance, right? They slipped through the cracks. We didn't realize that the type of legal dealings might be needed to create import-export structures around the world, or find distributors for the brand. you know, all of those things were challenging. But honestly, if it was easy, everyone would do it. And so overcoming those challenges, I feel, is just part of the parcel. I just think you have to be aware of them going into it, right? Or it's better if you're aware of them going into it. And maybe we weren't. You know, I'd come from a bigger corporation where there was entire departments doing all of that stuff. And I took it for granted. I took it completely for granted. And now I'm like, oh God, I've got to do all of that as well. So all of a sudden, there's the part of the job that the reason you start a business is because you're good at something, right? And you think you can do it yourself. You forget about all of the things that you don't know how to do. And then that ends up being most of your focus. So you actually don't get to spend as much time on what you're good at. Instead, you become a problem solver of all the things you're not good at. And that is the majority of your time. And so it becomes, I actually really enjoyed it though, Shawn, that challenge, because I learned so much. Like, I feel like I learned 10 jobs in 1 year, you know? And that, to me, I always felt that if I ever, you know, if it failed and I went back to a corporation and a corporate job, I now know all of these things. You know, I know about, you know, applying for a cola. I know about signing a contract with a distributor. I've done that myself. You know, it isn't all podcasts and
parties.
Yeah, exactly. And so those, but the biggest challenge is always going to be money. There's a P&L sheet. We all business owners start with a P&L sheet, but that's not the reality. The reality is cash flow. You know, and if you don't get paid on time, that means you can't order more juniper berries on time, or you can't order more glass on time, and therefore all of a sudden your supply chain is disrupted. And then if that money doesn't come in for the sale of gin, then all of a sudden you might not be able to make payroll. You know, and so cash flow was the biggest challenge. You know, we never ever had a huge investment on Fords. You know, so it was always, you know, building, you know, slowly but surely and in the right way, which was a blessing in disguise. You know, never have too much money that you do stupid things, right? And we never had that. So the biggest challenge was always cash flow. But I look back on the struggle years really fondly. You know, I think if you don't have those, and if it becomes easy, you didn't really go through the journey.
Wow. Yeah, I talked to a couple of small producers and they're always like, I want to get XYZ market. I'm like, yep, that's great. But like, you have to understand, like, you're going to send out a bunch of product to the X market, and then it might take you 6 months to get paid for that X market. And then you all of a sudden you outlane, but it's coming back in dribs and drabs. It's a big outlay and then comes back a little bit.
And honestly, sometimes, Shawn, we would send stock to a market just so we could get the cash flow without really having the ability to go and build the brand there. And, you know, and we never wanted to do that, but sometimes that was a necessity. You know, like, I feel like those survival moments and those survival decisions are really tough moments, you know, really tough moments.
You're still you're still the face of the brand and have been since day one, which I don't think will ever change. Ford's Gin without Simon Ford being the face of the brand is very, very odd for me to think of. Like, other brands can sort of evolve and get bigger without necessarily having that face, but you've got your name on the bottle, so that's never going to change. Sure. How do you approach crafting the identity of Ford's Gin, and how do you keep that story fresh and evolving as it gets bigger and older?
I mean, that's easy at the moment, Shawn, because it still is actually, you know, relatively small. You know, I think there's a perception that Ford's Gin is bigger than it is, you know, because we act that way. We act bigger than we are. That's our marketing strategy. How do we make as much noise and maximize the noise that we make and make it look like we're huge? And I like that as a marketing tactic. But actually, if you roll back the curtain, you know, and look at the Wizard, it's still this tiny little distillery in South London with 2 little 500-liter pot stills, you know, like churning out, you know, small batches of the gin that are made. You know, I mean, the artisanal side of it is so beautiful because, you know, obviously we have this 10th generation distiller that we worked with to create the recipe. He's passed the business on to his son, who's the 11th generation, and it makes him the oldest working distillery. And we've just hired a new I guess head distiller, master distiller. Her name's Ok-Ju Lee, and she comes from South Korea. And so she just came out of one of the best distilling schools in Great Britain called Heriot Watt. And so, and there's this, we still get our botanicals from this importer called Joseph Flack and Sons that have been bringing in juniper for 125, 30 years. And so the story is still very quaint. We actually do the opposite. There are a lot of brands out there that sell millions of cases and they try and make themselves look like they make it out of a small still. We're the brand that's making it out of a tiny little still, trying to pretend, that we're bigger than we are. We're sort of doing it the opposite way around. But we've talked about it a lot. What happens is you get bigger and you need to protect these qualities. And I'll be honest with you, Shawn, I don't think we'll ever get that big. I think that, I think we'll keep growing and we'll keep finding new friends and new fans, but I don't think there will ever be a point where Ford's is so big that we're in some giant factory looking place. I think it will always be this fun brand that bartenders love and hopefully home enthusiasts. So I don't think we'll ever lose that.
Music is a big part. If you're a bartender listening and you've gone to Tales and you have not gone to a Ford's party, you are completely missing out on the epitome of the definition of the most epic party at Tales since day one. Like even back in the day, the after party from the awards and everything like that, it's always been a thing. How does music fold into what you do, and especially the record you put out this year or last year, Music to Drink Martinis To? How did you get the Handsome Boy Modeling School guys to like go, hey, let's make a gin-based record? And I think they hadn't made any music for like 15, 20 years or something crazy, right?
Well, I mean, everyone listening, this is the real thing that Shawn and I talk about when we get together is the music and the fun. I almost want to rewind and sort of speak to what we were trying to achieve with Ford's Gin. I mentioned that the bartender helped us inform the liquid. It helped inform the bottle and the label and how we would talk and the information that would be wanted, but also how we would act, right? And I started by mentioning certain things like, Speed Rack being a sponsor and doing, the sort of bar fight, where we could give a platform to bars around the world at Tales and get them down to New Orleans, and things that supported the community and supported the bar and put the bartender first. And so, that was sort of a part of our, I guess, DNA of who we are. And the other part of our DNA is we are an extension of the hospitality and industry. That's the way we see ourselves, And when we go into, people's bars around the world, they give us an amazing time, drinks, the food, the service. And so we wanted to do that too. We wanted to always be the brand that could give back the hospitality that we received, right? And so, and then you break down what hospitality is, and hospitality is the sort of moments of and memories, right? And what creates these moments and memories is, of course, the service, is of course the product, the drink in front of you, the music, the ambience, the atmosphere, sometimes even how people dress up. And so we've always approached it like I think bars and restaurants approach things, and so we get creative with that. If someone could walk away with vinyl, there's a vinyl movement in the hospitality industry that would be amazing. If someone could, pick a soundtrack to a martini, that would be amazing. And of course, that idea came from Dan the Automator, who loves his martinis. And he was obviously the producer for the Gorillas and part of the Handsome Boy Modeling School and Deltron, so on and so forth, right? He's just this sort of legendary producer. And so when we sort of talked about doing a soundtrack to martinis, he said, I can't do this without Prince Paul, and of course, for those who do know Handsome Boy Modeling School, you'll know why it makes sense. For those that don't, the Handsome Boy Modeling School are these two producers, very well known, Dan the Automated, Gorillas, Deltron, as just mentioned, people recently like the Black Keys as well as Beck. And then there's DJ Prince Paul, who's hip hop royalty, Stetsasonic, De La Soul, and the Gravediggers, one of my personal favorite records too, along with De La Soul's 3 Feet High and Rising. And they formed I guess a collaboration called the Handsome Boy Modeling School, where they put on smoking jackets and silk jackets and fake mustaches and smoked cigars and pipes and drunk martinis, and in a very tongue-in-cheek fashion. And we were like, we do take what we do seriously, but not, ourselves, right? And they are the epitome of that. And so Dan was like, we need to get Prince Paul in, and we need to put the Handsome Boy Modeling School together if we're going to do music to drink martinis to. And so that's how that came together. And I will say that I think that Dan had to persuade Prince Paul quite, there was definitely a lot of coercing and convincing, but once it happened, everyone had fun. And so it turned out to be the right thing. It became an excuse for us to throw listening parties all across the country and the world, even actually, and then bring the Handsome Boy Modeling School together on occasion and give vinyl records to our friends, which is a great gift. We learn a lot from Will Guidara's, Unreasonable Hospitality, and this idea that you can sort of do something that blows people away and goes above and beyond. And we like, if you walk away from an event with a vinyl record that's completely unique, that you can't get anywhere else, that's kind of a cool moment in hospitality. And so Handsome Boy Modeling School helped us do that. And sneak peek, but there's going to be a follow-up coming soon.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Like I know your parties are always insane, and that was the one that I was just like, that is the best marketing plan. Like, that's the best little industry related marketing thing that you've ever done.
Yeah, people loved it in the industry and really got it. It's still a very sort of small niche kind of thing, but honestly, that's better. I do subscribe to that. You can't market to everybody. If you market to everybody, you're marketing to nobody. And so you find audiences, and there are more than one. There's more than one gin audience, but our audience at the moment is bartenders, and we tend to appreciate music because we have to think about that when we're working. Yep. And the ambiance we're creating, obviously drinks and so on. And so when our friends see us thinking the same way, I think it resonates. And I think that vinyl definitely resonated. And I think we timed it well because there's this vinyl revival going on right now, and we were like ready for it. But honestly, that wasn't, I wish we were as cool to say, yeah, we knew that was coming.
So with I've talked to a lot of people, and as you said about the industry earlier, like generational drinking changes has been a big sort of movement, the Gen Z generational drinking habits. How is Ford sort of playing into that change?
To the change in Gen Z's drinking habits? That's a very good question. I got into a big conversation with a friend yesterday who wants to create my friend Nira wants to create a drinks festival, a bit like we have our Tales of the Cocktails and things like that, but based completely around no and low, right? And I'm like, that's quite brilliant. If you'd said that to me 10 years ago, I'd be like, are you crazy? But this could, where do you go after the gym? You could go to the no and low places, right? And so we are not, is the answer. We're not sort of playing into any particular demographics, wants and needs, right? We're trying to be true to who we are. I know that changes as brands get bigger, but for now, Forge Gin is us. But do we believe that someone should have a no ABV drink? Yes. Do we think they should have a low ABV drink? Yes. And so when my friend Nira called up, I'm like, oh God, there's so many no ABV things. That this will be brilliant, but you should have some low as well, so that there is something there. And brands like Forge Gin could, show creativity in that space through the cocktail rather than through creating an innovation or a spirit or going no and low with our product. Now, is it something I would consider in the future? I actually would. And if you'd asked me this 3 years ago, I would have said probably not. I would be like counter movement. We're going to go high ABV. We're going to go overproof. But but I actually love the movement. But the other part of the Gen Z thing that I think I would rather more focus on, and we haven't done this yet, but I would, is I read a lot that they're not getting out the house as much. They're not going out as much. And I think it's really important to go out, find that energy, learn how to meet people in other ways than online, but actually, sort of be there in person. I think that interpersonal skills and human skills are really important. And the further we get away from them and become digitized and everything's on our phone, I think it's going to create a society where we don't know how to act around each other. And I think that the bar is the epitome of places, or the dance floor in a nightclub or whatever, where we can get together and interact with each other, right? So for me, hospitality has always been about making places safe for everybody. If you're, it's about being welcomed. Hospitality is about feeling welcomed, if you bring it down to a core. And if you're someone that doesn't want to drink so much, or you want something that's low and no, I think bars should have that on offer everywhere in the world, so that the people that don't want to drink can be alongside the people that do want to drink, and we can all interact and intermingle. So I feel like creating things that entice Gen Z to come out more and interact in a human way more, I think that's a really important thing. So while we haven't really sort of worked on anything to do that, it's something that I think about a lot. And I know that one day the light bulb will go off and I'm like, we can do this for Gen Z and make their world better. Because that's what the existence of brands and products is, to hopefully, make the world better, right? That's what you hope that they can do. And obviously not everyone approaches it that way, but the ones that do are usually the ones that succeed. And so, yeah, Gen Z is an interesting, they're an interesting demographic. But, when I heard that they were listening to grunge and 90s music, I'm like, I was like, they're definitely me.
Yeah, my daughter is 14 and she listens to 1990s and 1990s early 2000s rap. Like she wears Tupac and Biggie stuff. Like that's who she listened to. I was in the car the other day and she like had her phone hooked up to the Bluetooth in the car, and I'm like, "Is this your playlist, Jill? Because this is something I would listen to." And Mila's like, "No, this is mine." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like Nirvana came on, and I'm like, "This is insane." My 14-year-old daughter's listening to the same stuff I was listening to when I was 14.
The generational are interesting. Previous generations were looking towards a future, right? And of course, the way the world looks right now is that the future's not coming, right? The future that we imagined is not coming. So Gen Z is an in the moment, crowd. They believe in today, but because there's no future, there's a little bit more depression occurring. There's sort of that anxiety as to what is next in the world, and ultimately, I don't think anything's really changing from that perspective. Life's going to go on, and we need to make the most of our time on this earth. And I think that's the message that we want to get across. And do you know what? No better place than the cocktail bar, the bar industry, the hospitality industry, where people should be and are usually made to feel very welcome.
That being said, like I've reached out to you on a couple of occasions and just checked in because I do see your travel schedule and I see it on Instagram and Facebook. As an entrepreneur, like as you said, you're a small brand, behave like acting big, and that always has a bunch of moving pieces. And obviously, you've got a very good support network and team behind you, making sure that the behind the scenes stuff affords work. On a personal level, how do you balance out this work life balance of travel? Because I know we were actually saying off in the green room that you very rarely say no. I'm the same sort of thing. It's like I see everything as an opportunity and I'll say yes to everything. And my wife's like, "Dude, you've got like 7 irons in the fire right now. What if everything comes to fruition?" And I'm like, figure that out when it happens. But if I see an opportunity, I'm gonna freaking take it. How do you balance out this work-life balance for yourself and your definition of work-life balance?
I don't is the answer. I definitely was born with a lot of energy as a kid, and I feel like I still have a lot of energy. I mean, relative to my age, right? And so I think that I'm sort of blessed with that a little bit, like an ability to just go for it. But a wise friend once told me, there are sort of 4 things in life, right, that are really important. To individuals, I would say it's there's your work, then there's your family, then there's your friends, and then there's you, right? And seldom do we have enough hours in the day to be good at all 4. You know, the more time you give to your family, the less you might be going to the gym. Or if you spend too much time, you know, with your family, you might get behind on work. You know, or too much time in the gym and working, and you don't get to see your friends. You know, and they're all important. So the balance for me is often, I'm usually like weighted heavily in the area of, say, work and you know, maybe, you know, and friends, right? Because I see all my friends when I'm traveling, and then that pendulum may swing, and then I'll be weighted more heavily towards family and catching up on my health and getting back down to the gym and looking after my diet again. And I still have never found a moment in life where I get all four right at the same time. And honestly, the day that happens, I'm going to call you up. I'm going to come back on your show and go, I found out how to do this. But yeah, so the balance is a pendulum, but I don't keep it balanced all at once. You know, I would like to. I wish I could do that, and I hope to find the answers somewhere someday where I find that balance.
What do you see? What you're excited about for the next 6 to 12 months? The future, 6 to 12 months, 18 months for Forge Gin yourself.
Oh, see, the next 6 to 12 months with Forge Gin is super exciting for me. Because one, we've just created a lot of fun things. I might have hinted that the next record is coming out, and it's a banger. And so now we're sort of planning the launch, some more events and parties, right? Which will definitely bring this concept to Tales of the Cocktail. So I love that. We just built a cocktail bar at the distillery so that we can welcome guests to see and experience the Forge Gin production, but the way we would have always wanted it. We get to welcome you with a cocktail, sit you down, give you the hospitality, that extension of the hospitality industry. And we've worked on a sort of new education platform, because we used to talk about gin a lot and educate, and then we kind of got away from ourselves, and we're going to move back to that. So we've got a few cool things that we're working on. And that, to me, you know, bringing those to the world is fun. You know, if we're able to offer education to the industry on the gin category, I think that's a strong thing. If we're able to offer fun, I think that's strong. But the thing that's exciting me the most is it's the first time I've ever really thought about how can I bring the Forge Gin story out from behind the bar. And we talked about it a little bit earlier on in the podcast, but I'm like wondering how I can connect the bartender, elevate the bartender in the consumer world, with the hope that we can sort of inspire consumers, not necessarily the ones that go to the fanciest cocktail bars, but you know, everyone else to be more brave at making drinks at home. And so trying to come up with ideas that engage the consumer with Forge Gin. And that's a new journey for me with this brand. You know, I've worked on consumer marketing in the past when I, you know, worked at some of the bigger companies and on bigger brands that I've done, but I've never thought about it for Forge Gin, because Forge Gin was created and doubled down created on being a brand for bartenders. But I know that for it to grow and for us to survive as a brand, it needs to sort of go beyond the bar. And so that is what the next 6 to 12 months looks like for me. I think that once we come up with a way to talk to customers in a way that makes sense for Forge Gin, I think I'll be really happy. And then hopefully that's the moment I get to move on and make another expression of Forge Gin and get back into that creative zone again.
But, yeah, because you kind of went backwards, not backwards, but like a lot of brands when they launch, it's about let's get the consumers on board, consumer, like retail, and then on premise is like not an afterthought, but a lot of brands will see it as an afterthought. And you've gone, let's go on premise hard, and then now we're figuring out how to get into retail.
Yeah, I mean, on premise, bars and bartenders are our people. I mean, virtually everyone that works on Forge Gin came from a bartender background. It's the language we speak, it's who we are, it's the thing that we understand. The product was based on it, from the very, very beginning. So there's a little bit more of a challenge in talking to the consumer. And we know that the bartender wants a lot of knowledge. They want a lot of information on the product. They want something that's trustworthy. They want to know it comes from a good source. It's sustainable. There's good ethics behind it. All of those things, right? The consumer, is often attracted by bright and shiny things that talk to
Mm.
their emotions a lot more. And so, creating, pulling some of those emotions out of the Forge Gym brand and translating them in a way that will engage people to go, oh, I want to grab up a bottle of that and make cocktails like bartenders. I feel that's only a good thing for cocktail culture. And so I like this new challenge, but honestly, I'll tell you that I also like it because it's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working with a lot of very smart people on this at the moment, back at Brown Forman HQ. And it's a challenge, for everyone, this is a product that's built on multiple stories of production and functionality, and they're not built on emotional stories that would resonate with consumers. And so we're finding it a big challenge, and I'm enjoying that so much. If it was easy,
Yeah. Everybody would do it.
Yeah, everyone would do it. And so we're in that world right now, and so I'm learning on the job again. There's been some years where I didn't learn. I knew what I was doing. I was, and now I'm learning again. And when you're learning, you're growing, and then that actually makes your work more motivating. So I'm feeling very motivated right now.
That's awesome. It's not just slapping an on pack onto the bottle and chucking it in the retail space and it's going to get picked up.
No, yeah, we already tried that.
So we've come to this end of the podcast where I ask 5 deep questions. Everybody gets asked these questions. So what is one life lesson? What is one lesson or experience that has shaped your perspective the most, and how do you carry that forward in your life?
It's a very early experience. I jumped on a bicycle when I was 19, and I cycled with a friend in January from London. Obviously, we got a ferry to Holland, but from the Hook of Holland all the way to Romania.
Wow.
It started snowing as soon as we hit, Czech Republic, which was then Czechoslovakia still. That's me aging myself. We were on our way to a war zone, which is where Ceausescu, was in Romania, and there were all the orphans, and we were raising money for the orphanage, and we were going to go and help and work in the orphanage, right? And it was an amazing experience. There was no sort of preconceived kind of reason I did it. I just sort of did it on a whim and jumped and went, and it was difficult, and it was amazing, and I saw things and learned things, and I learned back then to be brave. That was it. That's the one thing I learned. I went and did something, and it was tough, and I came out at the end of it having achieved something. So now that moment gave me the opportunity to take the leaps in life, and I still do. I take those leaps. So that's the life lesson I got from that moment. It was just like, go do it. I didn't know what it would be, and at the end of it, I had traveled across this entire Eastern Bloc that was crumbling down in that period because the Soviet had just come down, and saw it all happening, learned so much from it, saw what was going on in this sort of revolution that was happening in Romania, and managed to, with only 700 UK pounds in my pocket from the beginning, make it all the way across, got to Istanbul, and managed to get home after it all on a bicycle in the snow with my friend Mark and Adam. And from that day on, I was like, just go for it. Just do it. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what the outcome's going to be. You have an idea what it might be. It will be completely different, but you can just do it. And so it taught me to be brave.
Wow. If you could leave one lasting message or piece of wisdom for the world, what would it be and why?
It's a boring one, Shawn, but I do believe in it, wholeheartedly, that, waiting until tomorrow is not worth it. It's that one shot at this life. You might not get that opportunity again. You just don't know. So if you have the energy, you should take the opportunity. I know that sometimes, it's just nicer to stay in bed, and that's okay too. Like that, pamper yourself, do it. But if you have the energy and you have the opportunity, you're doing yourself a disservice by not taking that opportunity. And that could be anything from going on a walk with a friend, to sharing a glass of wine with someone you love, if they offer it to you. We say no to too many things that, we might not get the chance. Again, we've lost a lot of friends. I've lost a lot of friends. And so my regrets are the times I said no to them. I didn't go to that concert with ex-friend, and then I never got a chance to go to that concert, and that's a memory I left behind because I was lazy that day. And so we there, and I would say the other thing, I'm going to add another one, and it's also boring, but it's so poignant. But look out for the people that look out for you. Be kind, and treat the important people in your life in an important way. Don't dismiss them.
Looking back on your journey, what is something you wish you had understood earlier in life?
Oh, that's right.
And it can't be to say no at 3 a.m. in the morning to alibi during chaos.
Say the question again, Shawn.
Looking back on your journey, what is something you wish you had understood earlier in life?
Honestly, I don't know if I would have changed anything. In this journey, there are plenty of moments that were so hard, and I wish I wish I'd taken this path and it not created that moment. But I've come out of it understanding. The one thing I'll say is never chase the money. That's that stressed me out. The years that I thought this was about money were the years that I didn't enjoy it. And the years I realized it was about actually what I get to do on a day-to-day basis was the moment that I started to enjoy it. And I think that if you're doing it for the money, you're doing it for the wrong reason too, and so try and get that conversation out of your heads whenever going on a journey, because it's probably not going to come. And then if it does, you're lucky.
Especially in the hospitality industry.
Right.
How do you define success, and has your definition of it changed over time?
Defining success has definitely changed over time. Right now, happiness is the most important thing, and trying to achieve it, and having good experience in life with good people, right? Status is not important, and I thought it was once upon a time. I thought that being the biggest, the best, and all of those things, it was something that would give you an advantage in a competitive landscape. And now I would rather someone else have those platforms that I once upon had. Once upon a time, I had some great platforms of which to sort of speak to the world and the community. And now I would rather those went to someone that's growing in their career, and I would prefer to mentor them, actually, quite frankly, and push them up on their pedestal. Like my name's on the gin, so I it's almost a given now for me. I have that as my platform, and I don't need any more. And so if ever I get asked, I wonder if there's someone else that would appreciate that opportunity more. But for me, I believe that this industry and career has given me some incredible experiences and some incredible friendships, and so I just want to enjoy those now.
What do you hope your legacy will be, and what steps are you taking to build it?
I actually don't, and never did, want a legacy. And no one believes me. My name's on a bottle. Like a legacy is being built around me. And this is another boring one, but I just hope that I gave people some memorable experiences, and just like anyone who loves hospitality, made people's days or lives a bit better if I was able to. That is it. I hope I challenge the right people to be better versions of themselves if they've ever sort of worked with me or, alongside me in any way. But honestly, I don't need the legacy. I'm going to say it's better to fade away.
Yeah, I think your legacy at Tails at least will be, well, it's a Tails party, but it's not a Tails Forge gin party. Man, we've known each other for a really long time.
Long time.
I'm old enough to remember the gin renaissance when it really, really hit. You gave one of the very first gin seminars in Australia that I ever went to. We've known, it's over 20 years now. So I really want to thank you so much, as always, for making time to jump on the podcast thing. And for anyone who's listened to this was a masterclass in how to build a brand. Like I work with a lot of small craft distilleries here in BC and Canada, and like there's a lot of things that you've said today and that I watch from you that I like apply and try and push these brands to sort of work on, because you really have built Forge Gin bootstrapped. And I do like the sort of analogy that you said, that you're a small brand with a big presence. And I think there's a lot of room for a lot of small brands out there to actually like take notes. So hopefully I'm going to just market the crap out of this podcast, so that you need to take a masterclass in building a brand with Simon Ford.
Yeah, and to all the brand builders out there, I'm here, and good luck as well. It's an amazing journey, and it's worth taking advice from Shawn here, or or anybody that's ever done it. Quite frankly, piece it all together and then create your own journey.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time again, man. Like, hopefully you're enjoying New York and wherever you're off to next. And have a good Christmas and end of the year.
And you. Yeah, happy holidays, my friend. Good to see you again.
I'll chat to you very soon.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, Pose Shifters. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I really enjoy sitting down with friends and peers and just chatting about the industry and getting down to the nuts and bolts of what's really going on out there. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, everything on all the platforms. Just hit it up and I'll do my best to answer any queries or questions you have. I'll see you next week, guys. Bye.